What up, photogs? Thanks for tuning in. I recently taught a composite photography workshop to a local high school class, and we had tons of fun. We put together the largest composite photo that I've ever done. 15 images, 2 gigabytes in size. This thing is massive, but it's awesome. And let me show you how we did it. So here's the finished image. This is what we put all that time and energy into, and I am very happy with this one. So let me show you how we got to this from start to finish. So I'm here in Adobe Lightroom. I'm going to select all the tiles, or photos rather, that we're going to work with. So I went through and I picked out my favorite version of Kat, which was this one right here. And this was my favorite pose that she had done throughout our shoot. And then I went through from there and picked my favorite versions of all the different branches so that I could get a nice variety on both sides and all the way around. Now, let's talk about how we're going to put them all together. So firstly, since this is the one I like of Kat, I'm going to create a virtual copy, and then I'm going to create one more. So the first one is going to be for Kat's skin. So let's switch over to the develop module and start editing. I always boost the contrast just a little bit, give us a little bit of vibrance, maybe a touch of clarity. How does that look without it? You know what, let's stay without clarity, but I'm going to boost the highlights. There we go. Now the eyes are a little dark. I'd want to work on those, but I think I'm going to do that in Photoshop instead. All right, so this is good for the skin. So the next layer is going to be Kat's clothes and the accessories. I have a couple different HD presets up here. Let's just try the medium one, see what it looks like. I'm down for that. So what I wanted here was to show lots of detail in the clothes, in her hair, and in the flowers. But if you'll notice, there's some oversaturation here. So what I'm going to do is take that, use my clarity slider, and just tone that down a little bit. That looks good. Because before it was blown out, we lost detail in there, but this is still good, and we can always change that later if we want to. But I am going to remove the vignette, because when you're compositing images, it's good to add the vignette last. You don't want to have to worry about gradients and other things when actually editing the images together. All right, so the third version of this one is going to be for the branch, because I do like that branch. And let's do the HDR one on full. Again, get rid of our vignette. I like that. There's some detail in there. And yes, this branch is out of focus, and that's on purpose. Because what I did was I locked the focus on Kat's eyes, and so we have branches behind her and in front of her and at her level. So that will help create depth in the image by actually having a realistic shallow depth of field with all of the things we added into it. So I want to edit all of these branch layers exactly the same. And I want to base them on this particular image. So I have this one selected first, then I'm going to select everything behind it. Not this one, because that's already our finished photo that I used to show you. Then what I'm going to do is go Control-click on here, Develop Settings, and I can sync settings. Or you can hit Command-Shift-S, just like it shows right here. And then it'll bring up all the settings that you can copy from the first one and apply to all the rest of them. I want to do all of them, so I'm just going to hit synchronize. And just like that, every photo after will get the same settings. Now, if I would have selected this, say selected all of them, but this one right here, the fifth one in, sixth one in, is the one that's actually selected. You can see how the little light box moves here as I'm selecting the particular frame. Now, if I were to try and synchronize all of them now, it's only going to take this setting and apply it to the rest in line. It won't apply it to the ones before it, even though they're all selected. So you got to make sure whatever ones you're going to copy, you always have the leftmost ones selected. All right, so we've got skin, We've got clothes, we've got branches, and then we have all the rest of our branches. But I'm going to take every other branch image minus this one, and I'm going to add let's go a little more. I like it. So I just want to brighten up the branches a little bit. And now that I'm back at the front of the line, I'm going to synchronize settings all the way across. So I don't have to go in and do this to every one of them, right? I'm at plus 0.6 stops on all these now. Perfect. And what that's going to do is help create a little more depth and texture as well with all the sticks we're going to layer up. So let's grab all 15 of these layers. Now I'm going to control click on that one, edit in. I want to edit in Photoshop, but I wanted them to open up as layers in Photoshop. And this is where the magic starts happening. And one of the reasons I love using Lightroom in conjunction with Photoshop is because of how well these things sync together and all the different things that I can do with them that you cannot do with other software. Like linking Adobe Camera Raw with Capture One, for example, and Affinity to do your post-processing will not sync like this. And if you'll notice, as it brings in each particular image, it's adding them as layers into one. So I don't have to worry about going through and manually copying each different file up here and either duplicating the layer to the original one or copying them over. It's automatically going to open them up as one file. Also notice down here the size of our image. We're already at 1.36 gigs and climbing. .73. I think we got one more. All right, there we go. So I'm testing the RAM on this MacBook Pro. Okay, so let's start out with the skin layers first, and that is this one. So let's name it skin. And if you just double click on the name, you can rename it. I know the next one is clothes. You can also control click on there. And this one, that one is just the branch. So let's leave that one alone. All right, I'm going to create a new group, and I'm going to drop skin and clothes into this group, and I'm going to call that cat. All right, so what's cool about this is if I select the group, control click on the little square where the eye is, I can either hide this layer or I can hide all of the other ones, which is what I want to do. I only want to see these. And let's work on those first. So skin, I'm going to create a layer mask, select my brush tool by hitting the letter B. Let's shrink that down a little bit. Cool. I want my size to be about here. The number doesn't matter. I mean, it depends on whatever size image you have. So there's no set number. But I do want my hardness at 50%. And I want the hardness at 50. Let's go down a little more. Because I want a nice soft brush, but I don't want it so soft that my mask is going to bleed out into her hair and clothes and everything else. So what I'm going to do is just mask off all of her skin. Now the skin processing I'm going to do only affects skin tones. So I'm not really worried about staying in the lines 100%. We're not performing surgery here, but I want to get close. So like these colors in her clothes will likely be affected by it. So I want to be sort of careful around that, but again, you don't have to be exact here. We just want to make sure we get all of the skin. And if you find that this brush is too big, it was like you just want to get the fingertips, you can shrink it down, you can make it larger, whatever works best for you and the size of your subject in the image. All right, cool. So now her skin is masked off. I'm going to hit Command-I to invert my layer mask. So now instead of hiding the things we just painted, I'm going to show them. And the reason I did that is because I only wanted the skin to be shown on this layer, and it would take way more time to go through and mask off everything else to leave the skin. So I'll just mask off the skin and then invert it. All right, so it looks like I missed a spot right here. So let's take care of that. And over here, still much quicker than doing it the other way. Then we'll add the closed layer back on, and you can see how much nicer this skin layer is than the other grungy HDR one. But we're not quite there yet. So I'm going to duplicate this skin layer by using Command-J, or you can just Control-click on it and hit Duplicate Layer. Let's pick this one. I'm going to go to Filter, Imagenomic, Portraiture. Now this is my favorite skin softening software. I played with the settings. I got them a little on the high side. I'm going to overproduce this just a little bit. That actually looks pretty good. But sometimes it's too much. And so what you can do is just drop your opacity down a little bit, and it brings back the detail in the layer before it. So I'd rather overproduce it initially, knowing that I can just easily dial it back like that. And that's why I duplicated the layer and then edited that one versus applying the skin softening to the original skin layer. Now, if Kat had like kind of bags under her eyes or more wrinkles, then I would go through with the clone stamp and I would soften those up. But she has pretty fantastic skin, so I am not worried about that at all. All right, so that is Kat. Kat is ready to go. The last thing I want to do is get rid of this umbrella. So now I'm going to clone stamp. So hit the letter S, that brings up your clone stamp. We should just sample over here using the Option key. Make sure my opacity is at 100, and then we're just going to paint over. Boom. We can go ahead and get rid of this stick too, because we're going to be adding that in. With the other layers. All right, I want to make sure there's no artifacts in here. Man, this thing is picking up all those little details that I don't want. That's fine. Just take an extra second. I'm not totally concerned about getting all this stick around the flower because I'm going to overlay literally the exact same stick in just a minute. Cool. I'm okay with that. All right, so now we have Kat against her background layer, and I think that looks pretty good. Cool. All right, let's start adding branches. So let's drag one layer up, show it, and this is going to be our first layer of branches. So this is going to be kind of repetitive, but you will see little nuances with each layer. So got this layer on top because I want the sticks above Kat's layer. I'm going to create a layer mask, grab my brush tool, and I'm going to mask off that branch. And then invert it because that's quicker than masking off everything else, right? But I'm not digging that hand down there. So what I'm going to do is use M, which is my Marquee Tool, this guy right up here. I'm going to select probably to right there in the branches. Then I'm going to transform it using Command-T. I'm just going to drag those down until I can't see the hands anymore. And the reason I chose this center point is because that can stretch a little bit, and you won't see it. But if I were to stretch something else up here, you might see that like kink in the branches. And I think that looks pretty good. But if you notice, there's like a white halo around these branches. So the trick to make them blend in is to adjust the blend mode and set it to darken. So now only the things on this layer right here that are darker than the layer in Kat's group will show up. Because remember, we processed much heavier HDR in the other branches. So the whites are not going to be as white, but this is a guaranteed way to make them blend easier. All right, so let's create another group and drop that in the group. Call this branches with an S. There we go. All right, turn that off. Let's grab the next one. Turn it on. Okay, so this one is in a similar spot, but it's a little bit different. And we're gonna grab this one as well. So same, you can hit Command-Shift-L, or down here and add a layer mask to it. Get our brush tool. We're gonna go through and just mask off the sticks. Now don't worry if you get things like that happening. I will show you how to fix that. It's pretty easy. Okay, invert our layer. Change our blend mode to darken. Okay, so this looks pretty good in here. Again, I'm not worried about these artifacts showing up because there's actually going to be a branch over those spots, so that doesn't bother me. However, there's a branch coming out of Kat's arm because of our blending mode. So remember before in normal, you could see where I just masked kind of sloppily, but darken will make that part go away and just leave the branch. So let's grab our brush tool, get down, zoom in, and we're just going to move that mask back so it sits flush with the skin. There we go. Branches number 2. And as you drag things into the folder that's turned off, they will automatically be hidden, which is neat. This one's moved over a little bit more. And if we turn them on, turn all the layers on later and decide that, you know, there's just too many branches in one spot, we can always turn them back off. This is a pretty quick process. All right, invert that, change our blend mode to darken, boom. Drop that in branches. Grab our next one. Cool. Add our layer mask, paint that away. Let's grab this one up here, because we can always change the layer mask later on if we decide we don't want this branch and we just want the other one. Okay, good. Invert that. And again, change our blend mode to darken. And again, the reason we're changing the blend mode to darken is because it saves us from having to go through with the brush tool, zoomed in all the way, and actually go through and like remove the layer mask manually like this, right? That would be a giant pain. And honestly, that would just take way too long. So we can just do it like this. And if you're shooting these sticks against a black background, your sticks will naturally be lighter than the black background, so you would change the blend mode to darken, and then you wouldn't have to worry about it. Oh, we forgot to invert it. There we go. Bueno. All right, keep trucking. This one, I think I might just want this branch, but again, let's add them both in. We can always change it later. I just feel like there's already a lot going on this side. Change our blend mode to darken. Boom. grab the next one. Okay, Command Shift L, get your layer mask. Mask off the branch, Command I to invert it. And darken. This might be the biggest, nope, forgot to add our layer mask. The most layers and the biggest composite image I've ever done, but it's probably the easiest just because all of these are so repetitive. There's only one that I know is a bit of a challenge. All right, so this one will be fun. Okay, so same, I'm gonna layer mask, but I'm only gonna layer mask off the branches like before. Okay, invert it, but we don't want, there we go. We don't want these branches to just float there, right? So what I can do is select the Move tool with the letter V, select our layer, and I can drag these down. Now they're totally in the frame, nothing's cut off. Blend mode to darken. That one looks almost even better when it's set to normal. Let's go back to that layer mask up here. All right, so let's grab our magic wand tool. Select this gray, delete that. That looks okay. It's a little splotchy in there, which I'm not digging, but what I can do is get back into this layer mask and just get rid of these little artifacts left behind. Cool. And this one's kind of out of focus anyway, so let's come back to that one at the end and see how it looks. All right, we're almost there. All right, add our layer mask. Paint these on. I'm going to do the same thing with this one. We drag it down. Good. Switch to darken. I'm okay with that. Now I don't like how all these are cut off at the same place, and that's obviously because that was the top of the frame before. So I'll grab a layer mask and I'm just going to shorten a couple of them. There we go. Now they look like they're supposed to be like that. Drop it into the branches folder. Got just a couple of more. Oh, these were fun. Okay. I'm gonna get in here kind of tight because I want to preserve as much of that headpiece as I can. Don't want to place that guide. Okay. All right, so now when I invert this, you'll see how there's obviously some blend issues here. So let's get our brush and let's paint Cat's shoulder right back in. Perfect. Same thing over here and the hair. Perfect. There's kind of some floaty action happening, so what I'm going to do is grab the Marquee tool again. I just want to select these branches and I'm going to move them over. Cool. I'm okay with that. Blend mode to darken. We've got some of this going on here That's our layer mask. So let's get in there. We don't want that leaf. All right, so this is where it finally requires some actual patience and precision. Okay. Put that right back into her hair. Perfect. All right. Let's grab this one. This one should be nice and easy again. Cool. Oh, invert it. Blend mode to darken. Branches folder. All right, the last one. Tons of branches. Let's get on it. You'll notice the other image is already starting to pop through, which is totally fine. Want to hide all of them. This is where the work is going to happen. It's down there on that skirt. Again, I can fix those later. All right, invert it. Obviously, I want that to show up. And we'll switch that blend mode over to darken so we can see some of these. Cool. So down here, you can see how the old color is coming through, which we don't want. So I'm just going to play with the mask, paint away some of that color so we don't get this like artificially created chromatic aberration, right? But I do want to keep these in here. Just want to get rid of that color cast on the outside. Now if you'll notice, there's like a gap right in here. Not digging that, so that's a quick fix. That's probably just because there used to be these highlights on there and we changed it to the darken blend mode. So none of those highlights are going to show up. But that's fine. So what we can do, get our clone stamp, select part of that branch, and just paint the branch down. Just like that. Same thing here, let's add a little more body to that branch. Oh, got another one over here. Cool. All right. Drop that in. I think that looks pretty cool, right? You got all these layers in there, different places in our depth of field. Some are brighter, some are darker, but they all blend beautifully. So let's save this giant image. All right, so we got it saved. I skipped ahead a little bit so you didn't have to wait for me. We're at 2.07 gigs. That is giant. So I'm gonna close this out to free up all that RAM. Let's jump back over here into Lightroom. And here is our finished image. Okay, so again, I want to jump right into the eyes. I'm going to hit the letter K to bring up our brush tool. I have a preset for eyes that bumps the exposure, 0.4 stops, adds some contrast and a little bit of clarity. So let's bring our brush down to about eye size. I'm going to brush that around there, a little more around there. And it's subtle, but you can see when I jump back, I just added a little bit of brightness to them. It's really easy to over brighten, over clarify, over sharpen the eyes. That's probably the most common mistake that I see. So it's like adding salt to your food. That's how I relate photo editing. It's better to go in small amounts. You can always add more if you need to, but it looks awful and it's hard to save it if you go too much. All right, so let's fix this thing up here. Again, I'm going to grab the brush. Let's paint a mask over it. Cool. I don't want the eyes layer, but what I want to do is play with our saturation. No, I don't want to boost it. I think I'm going to bring it down. I like that. Everything's kind of muted. I'm going to bring down the overall vibrance of the image a little bit instead of that. Too far. I think that looks good. I don't want to go totally black and white with it. Just take the color down a little bit. All right, let's bring some detail back into this flower. So the issue here is the highlights are good, but the shadows are not in a place to create enough contrast. So let's brush a mask over this. And we want to play with contrast. You want to drop it, right? Because decreasing contrast, or sorry, increasing it is going to jack up your highlights way too much. So we can drop it down. We can also drop in shadows a little bit. And now you can see all the detail in the flower. I still feel like there's a lot of dead space around the outside here. So what I could have done is taken the branches and slide them out to fill in this space. But it's going to take a while to reopen this file and do that. So I'll save you that trouble. And I will just throw a little vignette around the outside. Not too much because we're on a white background. And it would look really obvious and overdone to really bring that vignette in. So let's just go back to about there. I like that. I might add a little more clarity to the overall image. Double check to make sure her skin isn't too grungy now. I think I'm going to add one more layer of brightening on that eye as well. And I think I'm good on that. So there you go. That's how we've done the largest composite that I've ever done with the most layers to get this glorious photo of Kat.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode. So don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and then swing on over to photogsunite.com where you'll find tons of articles that will help bring your photography and your photography business to the next level. And lastly, don't forget to join our private Facebook community, Photogs Unite, where you will not only get live Q&A sessions with this guy, but you can get tips and tricks, strategies for how to solve any of your photography problems. We have a solid community there, and we'd love to have you be a part of it. So until next time, Photogs, remember that every photo you take brings you one step closer.